we could talk about at the end of today's presentation. Today we'll be going a little bit about, we'll be speaking a little bit about myself first. Then we'll jump into why is it important for product managers to know how to prioritize, what is prioritization, apart from a very difficult word to pronounce. And then we'll jump into some techniques that you can use with other peers, with inside your same team, with your boss, which I think is very important. And hopefully these tools will help you end up with a better product, right? Which is what we all want here. By show of hands, just to understand, if there are any roles that are not product managers here, I would love to see them in the chat if you can comment it. Thank you. So a little bit about myself. That is not my most professional picture to start with, but it definitely fits the theme of the presentation. So like Piyush said, I've been working in product management for 10 years this August, actually. It was my first role as the 10th anniversary of my first role as a product, associate product manager I was back then. I've had the luck to work with mobile apps since BlackBerry was the #1 app in downloads that we had. And J2ME was #2, so Android and iOS were just starting. I've had the luck to work in unicorns like Cabify in Spain, in Europe. I've been lucky to work with blockchain, and currently I'm lucky enough to work with a huge team, which is Rakuten, which is known as the Japanese Amazon. It's a huge company here in Tokyo, where I'm based at right now. I founded 2 companies. One of them went bankrupt. The other one I exited, so 50-50 there. And also in my free time, I like to play bass and football with my friends. Okay, so let's get to it, right? And let's start with why prioritization, right? So in case it's not clear, why should a product manager care so much about prioritization? Is it really that important, you might ask yourself? And the answer is yes. Why? Through prioritization, a product manager like us, or whoever was watching and in charge of doing prioritization, provides focus. All right, so through prioritizing a list of tasks, you as a product manager provide focus. And focus is one of the most important things anyone can bring into a team, right? This is why you should be aware of this responsibility to start with, and then you should be able to execute it following the best standards that you can find. Hopefully today we'll share a little bit of that. We're all prioritizing, which means that if you want to be successful, if you want to be the one that beats the competition, you will definitely need to be very focused. You know, you and your team will need to be very focused, and through a correct prioritization, you can achieve that. So prioritization happens when you tell your developer to do this task over another. It happens when you build a roadmap, right? It happens when you tell somebody, no, we need to fix this bug now. It also happens, of course, when you and your stakeholders sit down and have a conversation about what the next new feature or what next year we're going to build, or whatever related to your product should be in the future, right? We're not always aware of when we are prioritizing, which is pretty bad, actually. The truth is, prioritizing is hard. It's not always easily quantifiable, which is something we'll go over later, quantifiable. And it's not easy to inspect nor dissect, right? It's not like anybody will give you, oh yeah, this is priority number 4B, right? You need to find out for yourself. And what's even worse, sometimes you need to do these exercises with a lot of people, with big groups, which that's very difficult to manage when everyone is trying to get their way, right? Today we will review a few ways which one can make this task easier, such a critical task easier for everyone. So, but before that, we all have different places to get to as companies, as teams. We all have different objectives. But before we actually start with the techniques, I want to let you know that there is actually a bit of a trick, if you will. Good prioritization, regardless of the team, regardless of the industry, regardless of the project, the company, whatever, the tech stack, or anything really, means good prioritization wants to reach the same goal. So if you think about the sailors hundreds of years ago, and how they used the North Star to make sure they never got lost. This is the trick. This is the North Star of prioritization. And that is impact, right? Impact is the North Star of your prioritization as a product manager, because affecting either the users, affecting the company, affecting your numbers, affecting your revenue is the only thing you should be worrying about. If you're building something and it's not meant to have impact, why are you even building it at all, right? So of course, we all want to make the most impact in our clients. We all want to make the most impact in our revenue, right? You want to grow 100% your revenue by next month, let's say. And so it is very important that you know if you're causing impact or not, because maybe sometimes you will need to work on, clearing technical debt. And technical debt has no or little impact on the user, on the company. It has, of course, on the technical code, but even if you decide to do things that should not provide so much value or should not have so much impact on the end user, you at least should be aware of that, right? So that's why it should be a North Star. Okay, let's move forward. So before we take a look at some of the things, at some of the techniques, there are a few things we need to know beforehand. First of all, you should know, should take into account that you are not prioritizing for the 100% of your sprint, right? You are not reserving, you're not changing or defining the entire, or allocating, which is a better word, your entire development muscle or design muscle or any kind of muscle that you have to bring products to creation. You're not defining 100% of it. You already know how important your product is. You should already have a slot allocated for certain topics. For example, at least you should be allocating around 10% of your sprint or however you decide to work to solving bugs, right? Removing defects from the code. That's high priority. Therefore, you should always have a percentage defined to solve that. And ideally, the same amount in technical debt or design debt or some other things that make your process a better process. So the first prioritization tip is always make room for the essential. If not, they will come and bite your back eventually. Out of scope, today we will not talk about how to come up with great ideas. Today we will not discuss workflows. We will not discuss agile methodologies. These topics are very interesting by themselves and deserve their own presentation. We will not cover KPIs. We will not cover OKRs, which are, of course, basic in understanding how you are impacting the product and what you need to do. So please use the following prioritization techniques as you best see and as you best can fit in your day-to-day. So let's get to it. Let's start. Okay. First of all, prioritization, prior techniques with your boss. So your boss, your manager, whoever you depend on, might be one person, might be two. One person who you rather prioritize with rather than prioritize from is your boss, so to speak, right? So what does this mean, right? After all, your boss knows better than anyone in the organization what your job should do, what job you're supposed to do, right? Input from your boss is crucial to make sure you understand the current state of the priorities of all the internal players involved in your product or your company, right? Your boss is normally that bridge with upper management, with other peers, other teams in the same level, but different across, right? So we said, how does this work with your boss, right? So you will not prioritize directly with him, right? That's your job as a product manager. We said that's how you bring focus into the team. But in your regular meeting, through asking questions to him or her, you will need to understand what is the company's situation, right? In large companies, you understand the priorities of your division or your group. For example, that's something that happens with me every day at Rakuten. It's such a large company. I need to understand like by divisions or by smaller areas. If it's a startup, well, your entire company per se. And you need to make sure you get this input from your manager, right? Make sure you do this with enough time to ask as many follow-up questions as you need with your manager. This should happen, of course, in a recurrent manner, and you should have something, for example, scheduled in the calendar. So, right. So, okay, so I know I need to take input from my boss, and that's not always as clear, right? It also depends on the boss. So what kind of questions can I ask, right? So here are a few examples, right? So a good question I'd like to ask my boss is like, so which project cannot be delayed, right? Let's just assume some projects will be delayed because that's what happens. So boss, what project cannot be delayed? That's a good question. Another one is, will any of these following tasks block operations in any way? If we don't release this, will the marketing be blocked, or will the some other team that needs our infrastructure be blocked? Which one of these features that we're making make more money to our sales team, right? That's also extremely important. And so these are a few questions I came up with. If please feel free to comment in the chat if you have used any questions like this to get crucial information from your manager. So I don't have much more recommendations when it comes regarding to the boss, right? Regarding to that need to prioritize with your boss, other than make the best use of the time you have with your manager and one-on-one. But I do think that being organized is that, which means, keeping notes of every meeting, every decision taking, et cetera, that has always helped me. That picture is of my bullet journal from 2017, actually. I do this every year, and every day, and I have been doing this ever since. And this is where I track what happened every day following the specific bullet journal note-taking method. You can learn more about it at bulletjournal.com. I highly recommend it. I highly recommend that you take a look at it. And if you think your day could be a little bit less messy, please take a look at this, because it has helped me greatly. It's part of what I do every day now. All right, that was the boss, that was your manager. Now let's talk about what you need to pay attention to when working with stakeholders, right? Which is people from other teams that have certain ownership or something to do, let's say, with your product. For example, the marketing team. So one thing you need to understand as a product manager is that after the launch of a product or service, sorry, there. If someone can help me by muting that, but
Yes.
So as you might know, or you should know, as a product manager or somebody involved in development of digital products, after the launch of a product or service, the job is not done there, right? You need to, well, not actually you need to maintain it, but other teams from other areas of the company get to work, right? And as a product manager, of course, you should be aware of this. Teams such as marketing and sales are just a few of the teams that will share responsibility on the success of the product you're managing, which is super important. Because of that, you should listen to them. And also you should take care of their needs, which I know sounds strange, but it's true, right? Because it is you as the owner of the product that will make sure that all the best ideas from all the different areas inside the company are correctly represented in the roadmap, right? Nobody has the monopoly on good ideas, so let's not leave anybody out. And this is how I like to do it. I've been doing this in some way or another since I pretty much started. So let's review this basic exercise that will help you and your stakeholders be in sync, at least, you should know what's in each other's minds, and of course, hopefully prioritize. So normally this happens during a backlog prioritization meeting or a requirements gathering meeting, which is where you will use a tool such as this one. There will be normally many high-level features that come up, many good ideas, bad ideas, and you will need to keep track of all of them, right? So you will need to, I'm sorry. Okay. Using a spreadsheet, you will agree on a few things. Sorry, can you confirm I'm audible? My computer is freezing up. I will take that as a yes. Okay, perfect, thank you. So anyway, using a spreadsheet, you will use it to agree on a couple of things. Oops, sorry. Well, I guess I can continue from there. My computer is acting up a little bit. But basically, you will make sure you have room to measure how much impact that makes, that feature or request makes. You will also make sure that you have you measure how much effort it will take to build such a feature. You will agree on this on a quantifiable number from 1 to 5. Also, there should be somebody from your technical team who should help you to say how much effort it will take, right, to develop. Or if you can do it, if you're a technical product manager, technical enough to do it, well, you should also write that down. What will happen after this? And excuse me, my computer has frozen for a second. But basically, what you will get after this exercise is you will have 2 columns, right? The effort columns and the what is it called? Yeah, the impact column, right? So basically, what you will do here, and I will try to show it here before going into full screen again, is you will see you can add them, you can multiply them if you have a lot of them and you're not sure. But basically, with those 2 numbers, you will get to a total number, which I'm just going to call it total today, which it's actually quantifiable. It's a number, and by ordering, you literally will have what's most important and what's least important for your team. So why is this important? This seems like, oh, a little bit ridiculous. Oh, it's kind of super easy, and it is. But what happens is that this tool actually allows you to do something that is very hard to do with the groups, and we'll see it later in this, actually the following slides, where it's grabbing the ideas of many people which are not ordered, which are not easy to quantify, right? Because an idea cannot be quantified. And you can put that all together, and using a simple tool as a spreadsheet, you will actually end up with a number you can count and a number you can say, hey, but you said this was a 6 and this was a 7. Why are you asking me for high priority for these 4 tasks? So it's very important, right? Normally people here put another column for priority. I do not do that. There are many ways to do this exercise. If you are working, and this is just a recommendation, with somebody you have a lot of friction with somebody who doesn't see this approach as something helpful, I recommend that you go out and you say like, hey, listen, you can give a few extra points because your input is very important, or because I feel your team is misrepresented or underrepresented in my roadmap. So it's important for me that this happens. All right, let's move forward. So we've discussed your boss, we've discussed your stakeholders, right? So we've discussed up, and we discussed to the sides, your peers or your stakeholders. Now we're going to start discussing a little bit down into the sides, right? Prioritizing with your team, managing the battle royale, which is funny, right? So as a PM, of course, you will always, we said at the beginning, you will prioritize with your team almost every day, even without noticing. You're most likely doing it now. But yeah, I do want to say that when I say prioritizing with your team, is on very specific moments. It is your responsibility as a product manager to deliver fully prioritized and validated with your peers backlog to your developers, designers, quality engineers, etc. Now, that doesn't mean that on day to day, you will not have to decide on some other things, right? For example, let's say you will be required to like fine tune, to slightly correct the curves almost every day. Normally during the daily rituals, such as your stand-up meeting, or such as, your good morning in Slack, something like that. Let's give an example of a day-to-day prioritization that we might be doing and we might not be aware, right? So for example, let's say one day an engineer comes to you and tells you, hey, Alfonso, so it's Thursday, right? So the week is almost over, the sprint is almost over. Should I fix this bug? Or should I review this PR, which is crucial, is also very important. Both things are very important, right? So what to do in moments like this where it's not so clear? Number one, it should be clear, kind of. You should first go through the list of priorities in your head, check your notes, like I said earlier, but most likely you will already know at that moment, at that question, what is the most urgent task out of those two. It is important that you're transparent with your team about the priorities, especially about if something is urgent to other teams. You should let that know and let your team see that through you, right? For example, in Trello or Jira, this is very easy to do with indicators or labels. Use them, please. But most importantly, I think when you're prioritizing with your team is to rely on them, right? You hire good people for moments like this, exactly. When you're not sure about the best outcome could be, right? If I'm presented with that option, what I normally like to do is, if it's not super easy for me to grasp, or I really don't have an option, or I'm busy or angry, I don't know, I tell my engineers or whoever is posting me, listen, I need X and Y to happen at whatever next week. What can we do, right? Can we make it? Can you make this happen? Or what is your recommendation to me to make sure that this happens, right? So, and also very important, just sharing the priorities, relying on your team to make important decisions with you, maintains them focused and motivated, right? Which is also one of the things you need to know how to do as a product manager or as a manager in general, right? As a person in a position of certain management. Now, we're talking about working with your team. Let's make this more broad and say work with any team, right? Work with a large group of individuals, which is very difficult, right? If you're used to work in big teams, you most certain already use tools such as planning poker, which is the image we see here, where you and your colleagues estimate invested efforts by yelling out a numerical value for a certain task. So like I said earlier, exercise like this allow you to take something that is hard to grasp, such as the input and ideas of a large number of people, into something very easily quantifiable, such as a number from 1 to 5, like we did in the exercise a few minutes ago. And here, basically what you're doing is, like I said, converting qualitative opinions into quantitative judgments, right? This allows you to leave a meeting or to have a session, plan a session with at least a few clear instructions, a few clear objectives that needs to be worked on as soon as possible, right? So if you know, there are many ways of doing exercises such as this one, where you take a number, where you take an idea and assign a number to it, and some other person does the same. You can average it out. There are many things and many moments where you can do this. Please take into account that when you're taking into account the opinions of many people, you rather be prepared. You should be prepared. It's not easy. It's not an easy task, right? So hopefully these things that we've mentioned before will help you out. Give me a second. All right. Now let's jump into prior techniques for one-person projects. This is the last part, and I wanted to include it because even though it may not apply to our day-to-day work or operations, I think it will definitely apply to yourself. I'm sure a lot of you are entrepreneurs. I'm sure a lot of you have projects, if not by yourself, with somebody else that's very close to you, and right. So you need to make sure, right, when you're working on these projects, where each investment, as small as it is really important. You need to make sure from the start that you're going in the right direction, right? And what is the problem? We said with big teams, the problems is a lot of opinions that are hard to quantify, that are hard to make sure, okay, this is a number, we need this 11, we need this 4. The problem with small teams or with working with yourself is that it's easy to lie to yourself about what is important, right? Maybe you don't want to build what is important because you want to build what is cool, right? Maybe the project started as I don't know, a front-end project that you wanted to test out new technologies rather than lay out foundation. That's okay. That's okay. I've done that myself many times. But there is a little trick, a little something that you can do to make sure you are building for impact. And let's review it. So this is a short, quick version of something that I'm sure a lot of you should know, which is called the Kano model, right? Well, we call this must do, should do, worth it. First of all, the Kano model, which ends up looking sort of like this one, but more complicated, was invented in the 80s by Noriaki Kano, an educator and expert in the field of quality management, which is pretty cool back in the 80s. And he's also a professor here at the Tokyo University of Science. So basically you start like this, if my computer allows, okay? Basically, okay, before building anything, right? Use a chart like this to place the features, place the features you're planning on launching, right? It is important that this is your first step or among your first steps. In the Kano model, which is the complicated version of this, right? You classify customer preferences into 5 categories. And those categories measure how necessary or attractive a feature or a product line is for a customer. In this minimal version, we will just measure how something is needed, which would be impact in this case, and how much effort we will need to get it done, which is workload, right? So we make our little chart here, and you start by positioning inside this chart all the features that you want to make, all the ideas that you've had. You don't need to be very precise, which is what's cool about this tool. When we're speaking about large groups, it's all about being precise. In this case, when it's you and you're another partner, or and 2 other partners only, no need to be precise. And just think about each feature that you think you need to build, and then honestly, and that's the keyword, honestly, put it where you think it belongs. All right, so that's what we're seeing there in the screen. A bunch of features put along the impact and workload axis. And give me a second here. I'm sorry about that. Basically, I will continue even though, okay, it's freezing. Basically, what you need to do in this case is you can already start seeing, right? It's pretty obvious, which is what's great about this tool, that it's pretty obvious from just the first moments where you start placing features on top of the chart, what uh, what features are actually needed. For example, a feature, I'm sorry that you cannot see it at the moment, I'll make sure you see it, but a feature that is, right, a feature that is at the very right bottom part. What's that? That's a feature that costs us a lot to build and has very little impact. Why should we even build that, right? And then you have on the left top part, there you have tasks that are very easy to do and have a lot of impact. Hopefully you have a bunch of them there, which means that you can be really close to a very good product pretty fast. And I'm sorry, I will have to show it like this. And there you can see in the bottom, in the upper left corner, you can see those tasks that are the tasks that you need to go get, right? Those are the tasks that will very easily or in just very shortly even, which is fun, deliver a lot of impact, a lot of value to your customer or to your company, which is what you need to be doing. After a while, you just finish the lines and you say in the green is what we must do, and as soon as possible, apparently, since it has so much impact. At the bottom, we have what we should not really do at all, or what you should have a really good excuse to be building that. And then in the yellow area as well, then you can probably jump into one of the other prioritization techniques and see how you would go about that. And that has been all. Thank you very much. I did want to save enough room for questions. I know there have been some questions about this, and I will make sure this is shared and available, of course, wherever it's needed. I already see that question. So thank you very much, everyone. I know we went very quickly over these techniques, but I think there are small techniques. We're not talking about high scale prioritization, or we're not talking about what are the tools that we need to build, or what are the main features, or how can I come up with the best idea, right? A lot of our job as a product manager is managing the day-to-day, which is easier said than done. And I hope that these tasks or these little exercises help you both in your day-to-day and in your own team and for yourself. So thank you very much. I think there are a few questions here in the chat. How would you suggest we go about this, Piyush? Should we just go and answer the questions?
Yes.
Okay, so you say, Prathima says, who decides the final number of each column? Is it via planning poker? How do you ensure it's unbiased number? So that's a very good question. Let me just jump into this here. So my understanding is this one, right? It's who decides this, right? So if you see here, it's basically, okay, you are seeing my screen right now. It's basically, it's the addition of the impact and the effort, 5149, 3 and 3, 6, 1, 1, 2, which this can be added or multiplied if you have larger numbers or a lot of numbers. Multiplication normally helps, but this is basically how it is. And how do you make sure these two numbers are unbiased are a very good question. And that's where, for example, this is with your stakeholders, right? So this is where, let's say you're speaking to the sales team, to the sales manager, and he's asking you to, I don't know, put advertisement placements on somewhere, right? How do you make sure? Well, the impact is normally easier to define as with money, right? So in this case that I'm saying advertisement, well, if one makes me $200,000 and the other one makes me 700,000, well, that's the one I should go. And that's how you can make sure that impact is not very biased. Now, one thing you do take into account is that you will, like, it's hard to remove bias from definitions or estimations. For example, even in a tech estimation, that's why planning poker exists, right? Okay, maybe I misunderstood your question, and I see now that you're talking about the effort column, how if that comes from planning poker, and no, this should, I mean, ideally you should come with this prepared, yes, and ideally with planning poker would be great, but even just a high estimate from a high level estimate from yourself or your tech lead should be enough. Prioritization of outputs versus outcomes, which one is helpful? Also difference of B2B and B2C products prioritization. Yeah, good question. So this is why I didn't want to get into like KPIs or OKRs or all that, because it's such, which are subjects that I love and they're very entertaining to me. But now if you're asking me outputs versus outcomes, I definitely found like a lot of inner peace using OKRs in the companies that I've used them. I think they focusing on an outcome rather than on a number is very helpful, and I appreciate that. And thank you for your question. In my experience, I would say outcomes. And which one is helpful? Yeah, outcomes. Difference between B2B and B2C product prioritization, right? So what happens normally, or in my experience, what has happened in B2B companies versus in B2C. In B2C companies, normally myself, the product manager, we have more, let's say, control over what needs to be done, because we need to know the customer, and the end customer is out there on the streets, represented probably inside the company by statistics that we own, you know, some panels, not necessarily KPIs, but just numbers that we track from them. And on B2B, it's normally, I at least in my experience, and I've worked in two B2B products, normally the requirements come almost already given by our clients, right? So it's more on a let's agree on a feature set, which normally happens between the sales team and yourself. Of course, you're also involved. And that's the main difference I've noticed there. Really, the prioritization with B2B projects come more with like, who wants this product, who already bought this product, and when can we have it, rather than in B2C, even in more agile companies seeking to push a certain number or a certain outcome, right? Like Avijit asked. Why have you added impact and effort? Does something like not suit for this, right? So this was a very simple example. This is a very simple example. So my idea was to provide an insight in case somebody doesn't know it. I thought it was a good place to start. There definitely are a lot of ways. WSJF, which is what Pablo is recommending, with value and effort on one side and also cost, is very useful as well. I have found out in my experience that whatever tool works for you and your team and your stakeholders, especially, most of these questions are about that, is what you should use. Make up your own. That's what I've been doing. Could you please share the recording? Yes, we will. The team will. Can you share your experience on how you mitigate situation when prioritizing goals aren't met? Well, okay. So let's see how much time we got. Okay, 17 minutes. Right, when you don't, first of all, you should always be transparent, like I said in the presentation, both to your team regarding priorities, but also you should be transparent to your stakeholders and your manager. And rather than transparent, you should know how to manage their expectations. Managing expectations is a tool that's essential to any professional in general, but I'd say it's key to somebody that speaks to so many different people like us product managers, right? So when you cannot meet a goal, you know, you should go the highway, let's say, and say, admit to the mistake, make sure you find out what happened, not who messed up, right? Because that's not important. What's important is what happened and what can we make sure, what can we do now to make sure that doesn't happen again, right? And my experience is just I've done it many times. I mean, it's hard for projects to not get delayed, really. So I normally say, sorry, this is what happened. It won't happen again. How do I handle high paid person opinions, hippos, when you know that the request is not in line with the market demand? Yeah, so very good question, actually. I had a recent experience where I was working in a blockchain company, and the CEO, who was like a very well-known figure too in general in this space and all that. I was the first product manager there, so I had to talk with this, like you said, high paid person's opinion, this hippo, to make sure that I manage his expectations to what I was going to do. And also, I think one thing that is key when somebody like this is asking you to do something that you know will be bad is that you become the most professional yourself, understand that this is work, and say, hey, listen, this will be bad because of this. And if it gets to that point, which in my case it happened, I had to write an email and said, like, listen, I've told you a couple of times that this will be bad. You're the CEO and I can do it, but it's my professional obligation to tell you that what you're doing is going to hurt your product, and you will probably lose around 33% of your daily active users because they do this and they do that and they do this, which is what I said at that time. And I did convince him at that moment to not implement that change, or request, which was a very bad one. It did hurt my relationship a little bit, but I don't blame myself on that. I think I did what I had to do. Okie doke. Oh, what do you think about the dual track? One track for discovery, another track for one. Okay, so Alex from Spain, hello. He's asking, what do you think about dual track? So one track for discovery and another one for delivery. So if you don't know what this means like basically having parallel sprints for a team, one for delivery, which means, eating your vegetables. It means like doing what you need to do. And another one for discovery, which could be more for possibly launching new features, see if they stick, if they don't stick, how it affects the number, etc., etc. So if you can do it, right? There's nothing wrong about that. If they can and they let you do it, that's great. Just take into account that there will be a time where maybe you need to use the entire muscle of the team to work on delivery, right? So that's my opinion. Question from Kushal, apart from monetary aspect and any other factors which can be taken into consideration to come with a number for impact. Right, so for example, I've had this asked before, right? Oh, but in my chart, and I'm going to share again if my computer allows it. Right, so in this chart, I've had people come up to me and tell me, I'm sorry, there we go. And I have hit, okay, but registration, user registration, that doesn't offer any value to the customer, right? That should be down in the red area. And I'm like, no, wait. Impact means impact in any way. The fact that they can register is probably one of the things that provide the most impact, right? So going back to your question where you say, apart from monetary aspect and other factors that can be taken into consideration, how can you come up with a number for impact? So for example, think about the number of things that the user can do before the implementation of that feature and after the implementation of that feature. If a user can upload pictures, that's great. But if a user can share those pictures then with their families, oh well, that's great, and that actually helps us bring more customers, helps us bring other things. So I do believe that not only money is what counts, and actually it's almost never money. I mention money because when it's money, it's easy. When you're speaking to a sales team, it's gonna be easy. It's gonna be like, hey, how much money does this one make you, and this one, and this one, and we go for the one that makes us the most money. But most of the time it will be, are we letting the user do something new? Is this new thing that the user can do requested, highly requested, not requested at all? That will be, it's not the same if you tell me users can share pictures with their family versus you telling me we're developing the number 2 requested feature from the users. We have 3,000 requests every week for this feature, so we're gonna build that. So that's the impact. It can be measured in many ways, and you as a product manager are lucky enough to be able to decide what is impact, and of course, you being the advocate for the client should be honest about it and straightforward. And if you can think about it and believe it, you should have no issue explaining to your manager or your stakeholders why you're doing what you're doing and why you believe that has impact. All right, I think we have time for one more. If not, it's been wonderful to be able to give this webinar at Pragmatic Leaders. Thank you very much, everyone. The 23 people that have joined. Thank you for sharing your Sunday with me. I think there are no more questions. So Piyush, yes. I think that'd be it.
Yes. So thanks a lot, Alfonso, for taking out time and conducting such an insightful session for Pragmatic Leaders. I'm sure everyone would have some takeaways from this session. And yeah, we would love to have you once again for this session.
I would love that. Thank you, Vinay, Fatima, Atul. Thank you very much. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn. I'm always open there for questions. I'm in the Pragmatic Leaders Slack. And thank you, everyone. It's been a pleasure.
Yes. So before we end the session, I would like to tell you the session of this recording will be published on our YouTube channel. I'm sharing link of our YouTube channel in chat section. Apart from this, I'll share email after this session with you all with the link to join our Slack community and YouTube channel. So you all can go there, RSVP for our upcoming events, and yeah, look forward to seeing you in the next sessions. So once again, thanks a lot, Alfonso.
Thank you, Piyush. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.